This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with this plight? Aha! Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at canva.com.
The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, boy, oh boy, early voting in New York is big time. And that is a great thing because it looks like people are engaged in the process and feeling like it is truly a high stakes election. And yes, it is. The stakes could not be higher, guys. In the first 3 days of early voting so far, the totals have surpassed the early votes overall in 2021. Now, of course, 2021, of course, you got COVID, all those other things. But still, that is an extraordinary amount. They are saying that just in 3 days, 223,000 people have voted early, with the highest numbers in Brooklyn and Manhattan, and also for many people over the age of 50. So you would think sort of when you hear Brooklyn, Manhattan, that may be good for ZoHran Mamdani. But then when you hear that it's over 50, a lot of his voters seem to be younger people. So this may bode well for somebody like Andrew Cuomo and the others in the race. Andrew Cuomo getting a boost. He has gotten more supporters in the last few days. Some big names, folks who have been switching different camps, voting for Andrew Cuomo. And the reason is not that they don't like another candidate. The reason is at this point, they realize that so much is on the line. Think about a ZoHran Mamdani, New York. And if that doesn't send chills through your spine, I don't know what does. And it's almost like, where do you begin? You got the defund the police comments that he made in the past. You've got the open up the jail cells. You've got the let's send a social worker versus an NYPD cop. The list goes on and on and on. And boy, is it incredibly concerning to hear that this guy right now is still leading in the polls, although there are some new polls that show that the race is definitely tightening, and that is a great thing. Right now, it looks like ZoHran Mamdani is about 10 points ahead of Andrew Cuomo in the latest poll. I'm going to give you that information shortly. That sounds like maybe a decent amount, but the gap is narrowing. That's the good thing. Because ZoHran Mamdani at one point was like 20 points ahead of Andrew Cuomo, 20 points plus. And now it's about 10 points. And if you give it a few points off, few points here, that could mean that clearly ZoHran Mamdani looks like he's topped at 45%. Andrew Cuomo in this poll is at 34%. So he is rising while ZoHran Mamdani seems to be staying put. His supporters are stalwart, but they don't seem to be growing. Where it looks like Andrew Cuomo, who's the number 2 in all the polls, shows that he is narrowing the gap. And in this latest poll, Curtis Sliwa has 11%. So, boy, the race does seem to be tightening, and it's just a little over a week now until Election Day. I cannot believe it is right around the corner on November 4th. Meantime, ZoHran Mamdani, boy, oh boy, everybody talking about his latest comments tied to 9/11. Trying to play that he's the victim or his family was the victim of 9/11, as opposed to the 2,977 American souls who died that day. I find it disgraceful. I watched that press conference that he gave, and we're going to have some comments from Carl Rove in a little bit because, of course, he was the senior advisor to then President of the United States during 9/11, George W. Bush. And he found those comments utterly disgraceful, as did I. I couldn't believe ZoHran Mamdani, there he is, comes out and he blames Islamophobia, saying Islamophobia was the real sort of victim. That was the horrible thing that happened because of 9/11. When I think 9/11, and I'm not for anybody having any sort of phobias against Muslims or anything, I'm a big believer everybody has to get along and you got to treat good people well. No matter whatever your race, color, creed, we are all in this together. We're all Americans. And yet it seems like in ZoHran Mamdani's world, he is either you're Islamic or you're not. His words are so divisive. I find them really hate-filled, and I also find them dangerous for someone who wants to be the mayor of New York City. And if you look at his words, it's really, really troubling. He comes out and says, I'm doing this press conference talking about 9/11, and then he invokes the story of his aunt. By the way, it turns out now, it may not have even been his aunt, that he may have even messed up on the story or fabricated or twisted the facts with the story. That apparently reports are that it was a distant relative and that the aunt never lived even in America, that his aunt didn't wear a hijab. So none of the facts sort of match according to a couple different reports out there. So is he just kind of invoking a false story? Does there really somebody that this happened to? And even if it still is this what you think of when you think of the victims of 9/11? That's not what I think of. I think of the people in the Twin Tower. I think of the people at the Pentagon. I think of the people in Shanksville. I mean, this is just deplorable that this is what he thinks of when he thinks of 9/11. Here is ZoHran Mamdani, and boy, are his comments sparking a lot of outrage, saying, shame on you, non-Muslim New Yorkers. Listen to this one.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. I want to speak to every child who grows up here, marked as the other, who is randomly selected in a way that never quite feels random, who feels that they carry a stain that can never be cleaned. Growing up in the shadow of 9/11, I have known what it means to live with an undercurrent of suspicion in this city. I will always remember the disdain that I faced, the way that my name could immediately become Muhammad, and how I could return to my city only to be asked in a double-mirrored room at the airport if I had any plan on attacking it.
The other, and it was emotional. You hear him getting, teared up. Wouldn't it be nice if he got that emotional over the victims of 9/11? I'm talking about the real victims of 9/11. Those who are in the Twin Towers in New York. And as I mentioned, in Pennsylvania and in Shanksville, getting all emotional. What about the police officer who goes out and never comes back to his family? I'd love to see him get emotional about that. What about so many other people? What about Jewish students on the campuses and colleges who have been shouted at and spit at and everything else the last year or two while he's been out at some of these pro-Palestinian protests? I didn't see him get emotional over that. They feel like the other because of people like ZoHran Mamdani. I mean, this is shocking to me. Shocking. As someone who, every time I think of 9/11, I think of those poor people that were in the Twin Towers. How about the people that had to jump to their deaths I don't see ZoHran Mamdani upset or emotional about that. He's emotional about an aunt that it turns out maybe wasn't even an aunt after all. It might have been a distant relative, according to multiple reports. So there's a lot of questions tonight, but boy, should we not be extremely, extremely concerned about ZoHran Mamdani. And here is Carl Rove. As I mentioned, he was senior advisor to then President George W. Bush during 9/11. And this is what he had to say about ZoHran Mamdani's speech right there.
I've watched the 7-minute video, 6 minutes and some odd second video a couple of times, and there are two things that stand out to me about it. One is that the first half of it, it was eloquent and powerful, and you could tell he believed in every single word, and it was dreadful because the whole message was everybody in New York City hates Muslims. It starts with his aunt, but goes on and from there and there. It's like we are as a people, as a religion, are being ignored or threatened or reviled or trashed every single day in New York City. And it's angry and it's bitter and it's nasty and it's not reflective. Yes, I'm sure there are people in New York who say ugly things about Muslims. I'm sure there are people who say ugly things. I know so about Jews. I'm sure that there's people who don't like the Italians. That's not most of the people in New York. And most of the people in New York are content, happy, you might say, to live in a diverse community that has such a rich history of accepting people from outside our country and making them into America.
And here's a little bit more of Carl Rove's description of that 7-minute diatribe by ZoHran Mamdani.
I want to return to that 7-minute speech because the first part of it I thought was an unmitigated disaster. Everybody hates Muslims, and we are put upon, and I'm angry, and I'm upset about it, and by God. And then he got to the halfway point, and he could have rescued it. He could have turned and said, we are all in this together, every Christian, every Jew, every Muslim, every non-believer, we're all in this together, and we as a city have to find a way to be together and lifted the spirits of people and called on the better angels of their natures, as Madison said. But instead, the second half of his remarks is, we're embattled and I'm not going to take it anymore. So this guy wants to lead this big cosmopolitan, diverse city, and he cannot bring himself to call people together. So, look, it was astonishing. Yes, I know that people who are Muslims after 9/11 felt sometimes, that people were blaming them. But that wasn't most of America. And we had a president of the United States who went to the National Muslim Center in Washington, D.C., and on television, seen by the entire country, stood with Muslims and said, we are not war with Islam. We are at war with terrorists. And, he did that helped bring the country together at a fractious moment. This man who wants to be the leader of New York gave 7 minutes of bile, of anger, of viciousness, of nastiness, of disunity, and he wants to be the mayor that brings this great city of yours together. It is astonishing to me.
7 minutes of bile. That's a great description, Carl Rove. You are spot on. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Robert in Brooklyn. Line 2, Robert, your reaction.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for taking my call. Well, it's very hopeful, the huge voter turnout. In the prior mayoral election, there was only like 23% people showed up. So this is very good. And Dov Hikind, he switched from Sliwa to Cuomo because, quite frankly, Cuomo is the only chance we have. And I just want to remind people that, people say, well, Cuomo is bad and all that. Let's be clear. Mamdani is a whole new level of evil, a whole new level of vicious. He is horrible, Mamdani. Okay? Let's just say a few words. Columbus, you can't compare the two, Cuomo and Mamdani. What about Intifada? What about communism? What about domestic violence? So no, as bad as Cuomo you might think he is, there's no comparison. And what about the NYPD and emptying out the prisons? Now, in the debate, the second debate, You had Mamdani. Cuomo said Mamdani wants lately. Now he's talking about freezing the police. Previously, he has said that he wanted to defund the police, and the Democrat Socialists of America, they talk about defunding the police. But there's no
by the way,
contradiction.
Robert, I got to take issue with what you just said, and not taking issue with you. But you just brought up the defund. He's very clever. Because what do you think, not sending police out to certain assignments and also saying he's not going to hire any new cops? Well, what happens if like a couple thousand just want to leave immediately because they can't stand ZoHran Mamdani? He's not going to fill their slots. And you got a city that has, a police department at that point that's going to feel so demoralized, so angry. So that is defunding. And then he's going to send social workers versus cops on tough assignments. He wants to kill the strategic response group. He's basically saying, I still want to defund the police, even though, wink, wink, I'm not going to do it. He's just kidding. I mean, I'm being facetious because if you listen to his words, he is still a defund the policer.
Well, exactly, Rita. Exactly. Because if you're going to freeze the police, I sent this when Dominic Carter filled in for you on Thursday. If you're going to freeze the police and all the police, they're going to be, as it is, they're leaving.
Yes.
But they're going to leave even more.
Exactly.
So that's the equivalent of defunding the police. And he plans to play the word games. He plays games with defunding and freezing.
Robert, do me a favor. I'll hold you over. We're going to go to a quick break because I think this is such an important topic. We got to go to a hard break, but we'll have much more with Robert and the rest of you guys right after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This shrimp and coconut sauce is divine. What's your secret?
Goya coconut milk.
How does it taste so good?
It's all in that real coconut flavor and that rich, creamy texture.
What about thickeners and added sugars?
None. Just smooth, coconutty goodness.
What can I make with it?
From curries to sweet treats like coconut flan, the possibilities are endless.
Goya coconut milk. Take your cooking to the next level. No question about it. Find it in the Goya section of your local grocery store. If it's Goya, it has to be good.
Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we can calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, the New York City mayoral election is coming up fast. It's going in the fast lane, guys. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go back to Robert in Brooklyn. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, well, Laura Loomer had posted a tweet from Mamdani from May 20th of 2020, and he said clearly, quote, we not only must we decriminalize sex work, we need a comprehensive platform of justice for all, unquote. So he clearly said about decriminalizing sex work, and he clearly wants to pretty much let out all the prisoners out of jail. So, folks, look, I mean, he's playing word games when he says he doesn't support prostitution, but he's talking about sex work. He's playing word games. When he's talking about, he's going to denounce jihad, he's not going to denounce, the intifada, the global intifada. He's playing word games. When he's talking about, he's going to freeze the NYPD, but he's not all of a sudden he's not going to defund him. No, he's going to defund him. He's playing word games. Folks, we cannot play Russian roulette with our lives, literally.
You know what, Robert? So well said. He is the king of word games. But if you really listen to what he's saying, he is telling us what he plans to do. And I agree, by the way, Robert, I think he's going to be even more destructive should he be elected, which is why everybody get out and vote. Early voting has started, and we're going to continue more after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus has movies. So many movies. The movies you've seen 1,000 times and could watch 1,000 more. Iconic movies your friends can't believe you haven't seen. New movies, classic movies, new takes on classic movies. So whether you're into Top Gun or The Naked Gun, Mean Girls or Mission Impossible, Smurfs or Sonic the Hedgehog, there's a mountain of movies to discover on Paramount Plus. Start streaming today.
Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Fort Worth, Texas, where the police department says 2 of its officers, with the help of bystanders, saved the life of a baby girl that was pinned under a car following a crash. The officers responded to a report of a crash that resulted in a mother and her 1-year-old child being ejected from the car. Now, the infant was pinned underneath the overturned vehicle and was unresponsive. When the officer realized that the child was under the vehicle, he got the help of bystanders at the scene to help them push the vehicle over. Then they quickly tried to give CPR and chest compressions on the girl, while the other tried to clear her airways. Finally, after repeated efforts, the child let out a cry, letting the officers know that she was all right. And the police department there said, "We are beyond proud for the life-saving actions performed by our 2 officers, for their quick response to this very terrible scene. If it were not for their fast actions, those 2 individuals would probably not be alive," including that little baby girl. And bravo, of course, to our great men and women in blue. Well, you know how important the police are to us here on the Rita Cosby Show. I am such a big supporter of our men and women in blue. And to think that we have now ZoHran Mamdani, who is still the leading candidate for mayor in New York, talking about, well, we're going to kill this certain police unit. We're also going to have this civilian complaint review board. So if an officer, if they feel an officer gets out of line for some reason, it's going to be a bunch of civilians, mini Mamdanis, that are going to be reviewing what kind of disciplinary, if any, goes against that officer versus an NYPD commissioner who has a sense of what it's like to be an officer out in the field. I mean, to me, this is just such a disgrace. The NYPD, I bet you, will leave in droves, guys. How could they not when they see what is going on with ZoHran Mamdani? Should he get elected, this is going to be a disaster. The good news is there is a little hope, guys, and that is because there are some new polls that just came out. There's one in particular that shows that the 34-year-old Democratic socialist ZoHran Mamdani, who, by the way, didn't show up for 80% of the time there in the assembly and didn't sponsor any bills. So it sounds like a very remarkable assemblyman. That's the least of it right now with all these other crazy things that are coming out about him. But in this latest poll, he is still ahead of Andrew Cuomo, who clearly is the number 2 guy in this race, if you look according to the polls at least. But here it is. Mamdani stands at 44% among likely voters in this most recent survey by Suffolk University. Cuomo has 34%. So he is definitely narrowing the gap, because at one point it was almost 20 percentage points. So in the September poll, there was a 20-point lead in the Suffolk same poll. Now, here it is, of course, October, and it's a 10-point advantage. So it looks like Mamdani is staying flat or dropping a little. Cuomo is coming up in the polls as people are learning more and more about the dangers of ZoHran Mamdani. And I want to play that comment again that he said at that press conference where he was flanked there talking about 9/11. Gets emotional, gets heartened, doesn't say anything about the victims of 9/11, because I guess he thinks the only victim of 9/11, even though he wants to be mayor of New York, and next year is the 25th anniversary of 9/11. And this guy now, his victim of 9/11 was his hijab-wearing aunt who feared for her safety and felt there was Islamophobia after 9/11. That's who he feels is the real victim of 9/11. I got to play this crazy comment again.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. I want to speak to every child who grows up here, marked as the other, who is randomly selected in a way that never quite feels random, who feels that they carry a stain that can never be cleaned. Growing up in the shadow of 9/11, I have known what it means to live with an undercurrent of suspicion in this city. I will always remember the disdain that I faced, the way that my name could immediately become Muhammad, and how I could return to my city only to be asked in a double-mirrored room at the airport if I had any plan on attacking it.
Well, it turns out, by the way, his aunt that he described was the victim of, he believes, Islamophobia after 9/11 because she got dirty looks. Well, here it is. Some internet sleuths did some research, and it turns out that his aunt, who's a public health consultant, Masuma Mamdani, who's the Democratic nominee's only aunt, by the way, apparently she doesn't usually wear a hijab, and she lived in Tanzania on 9/11 and was there during all that time. And there are reports that now he's kind of coming out and saying, well, maybe it was sort of a distant cousin. Maybe it wasn't exactly correct. There are multiple reports out there that maybe it wasn't that aunt after all. I think you kind of remember if you're going to use a story like that. And even if it is accurate, that's the real victim of 9/11, I find obviously, I don't like anybody to feel like they're stigmatized, whether they're wearing a hijab or not a hijab. There are Muslims out there that are great Muslims out there. This isn't an issue about Muslim whatsoever. This is an issue about a guy whose priorities are completely out of whack, who wants to be the mayor of the biggest city in America, and who what he gets emotional about is an aunt on the train there after 9/11. And no reference whatsoever in that speech that went on for minutes upon minutes, no reference whatsoever to the victims in the Twin Towers or the Pentagon or Shanksville, Pennsylvania. No reference to that, because I guess those were not the victims of 9/11 in ZoHran Mamdani's mind. That, to me, is shocking. In a prepared speech, how dare he? How dare he? Here is Kat Kamik, Congresswoman from Florida, with her reaction about what Carl Rove called the 7 minutes of bile. Here's Kat Kamik's take.
I just still can't believe that we are seriously looking at the potential of New York City, Ground Zero, 9/11.
25-year anniversary.
Yes, exactly. 25 years. And my husband is a firefighter. simply because he watched 343 of his brothers run into those buildings that day, and he dedicated his life to the fire service in their honor. And now we are watching a terrorist sympathizer, a guy who associates with known terrorists and whose own father says that these suicide bombers need to be recognized as legitimate soldiers and we need to understand their plight. Give me a break. Better yet, New York, don't elect this guy. Make it so it is impossible that we ever get back in this position again. Never, ever, ever should this guy have ever been able to get as far as he can. Not only is he woefully unqualified for this job, but it is a slap in the face to every man and woman who lost their life and their families.
I agree with Kat Kamek. Boy, get out and vote. And thank goodness so far, as we were just talking about, the early votes is at record numbers. 3 days of early voting is at 223,000. And that surpasses the total early votes in 2021. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Reggie in Texas. Reggie, go ahead. Do you think there's something wrong with the water in New York? I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah, yes, ma'am. We're all concerned about what's going on there. And the funny thing about this clown, he's sitting there and he's shedding these crocodile tears for this aunt, whether she exists or not. But his anti-Semitic, vile rhetoric that he spewed out, he's not worried about how these Jewish students feel when they're being basically locked up at Columbia University and all the other vile things he said. Rita, there's a pattern. Every time you play one of his sound bites or you comment on what he said, you always follow it with, it's unbelievable, it's horrific what he's saying. And there's no backlash. He's not he's not taking back anything. He's not amending his statements. He's getting away with what he wants to do because he's gonna govern as a partisan. He's made that abundantly clear. This is now their policy, and what I mean, anyone that's supporting him, these Democrats who are support, they're lock, stock, and barrel in step with him. Whatever he does, they're in tune with what he's doing. They're as responsible as he is.
I agree. By the way, Reggie, the backlash is coming from ZoHran Mamdani. I mean, that's the astounding thing. I use the phrase cojones because he really does have a lot of cojones here, because what happens with this guy is when anybody criticizes him, because needless to say, after he made those comments, and I remember watching, I thought, no, he didn't just say that. He didn't just leave out the real victims of 9/11. And sure enough, he did. And so many people out there were critical of him. And he said, oh, well, they're Islamophobic. He went back to the race card again. Oh, they just must not like Muslims. That has nothing to do with Muslims. There are so many wonderful Muslim people out there that were very upset at what happened on 9/11 with the victims of 9/11 in the Twin Towers and elsewhere. This guy, everybody else is wrong. He's right. And if you criticize him, it's Islamophobic and racist. And that's what he is doing now in the final days, because he realizes what he has said and what he still continues to say. Because those comments I just played, it wasn't like years ago, Reggie. It was just a few days ago. So this guy is telling us who he is. And I believe, I just said it to Robert, you probably heard Reggie, I think this guy is going to be so much more dangerous if he gets elected, because he's already trying to he can't even hide his beliefs. And in fact, I just saw a video recently of a comment that he made a few years ago where he said, we need to have more members of the Democratic Socialist movement. It was in 2021. And he said, we have to elect more Democratic Socialists, which believe in the, defunding the police, the opening up the jails, all these things that he still very much espouses. And he also is telegraphing what he plans to do. So he's planning, I believe, to be, he's already, if you listen to his words, just as Robert said, he's a wordsmith. So he's still already saying what he's going to do. I believe he's going to go full throttle in terms of really destroying the New York City Police Department, destroying, I think, the New York City economy with so many of these things he's talking about. I think he's going to create so much division and so many issues of hatred in this city. That speech wasn't the speech of a guy who wants to be mayor of all people of New York. That was a guy who said, our way or the highway. That's how I read that, Reggie. Well, how did you read that speech?
Oh, absolutely. My dad used to say this, Rita. He used to say, when someone shows you what they are, believe them. He's showing us what he is. And it's funny that you mentioned his lack of any kind of legislative accomplishment there in the New York legislature. Sounds an awful lot like Obama. Sort of undistinguished career being pushed off. And anyone who thinks that the mayor's office in New York is the final resting or landing spot for this guy, you're mistaken. This guy's got much higher aspirations. He has much higher aspirations.
I agree. And by the way, the Democratic Party, I think, also has higher aspirations for him, too. And you saw that. Look at that rally that took place over the weekend. I mean, it was packed. It was like 13 to 16,000 people. And AOC was there and Bernie Sanders and everybody. Reggie, thank you very, very much. And everybody, we're going to continue your calls after the break. But first, we have a special Support Our Heroes.
The Rita Cosby Show presents Support Our Heroes.
And this is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Support Our Heroes segment. And everybody, this story is coming from Tyler, Texas, where East Texas veterans returned home from a hero's flight to an emotional homecoming at Tyler Pounds Regional Airport, where family members and friends gathered to welcome them back from their trip. Many tears, many hugs as the veterans were reunited with their families. And for some veterans, the fanfare represented a homecoming they said they never received after the military service. One of them, an Air Force and Navy veteran, said that if you came home at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, often there were few people around to greet you, and you just left and got in your car. So it was a quite different return after a year from Iraq. And so to come back now, this means the world to me. How beautiful and how wonderful that they were able to go to Washington, D.C. to visit all the different memorials, to see the names of some of their comrades, and obviously spend time with fellow veterans. So important and so beautiful to see these honor flights and bringing veterans together. And I'm glad they got a big, big, warm welcome home when they came back. And everybody, help America to never, ever forget. All you have to do to make such a huge difference is donate $11 a month. That's all it takes to make such a huge difference with the incredible Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Be sure to check them out. They are such an extraordinary organization led by the great Frank Siller, who started the organization honoring his heroic brother, Stephen Siller. And everybody, check out the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at T2T.org, T2T.org.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
We all love a legendary comeback, and Degree Original Cool Rush is back and better than ever. Cool Rush isn't just a scent, it's a movement, a fan favorite that delivers bold, fresh vibes and all-day sweat protection. Whether you're heading to the gym, the office, or just trying to stay fresh on a long day, Cool Rush has your back. So if you haven't tried it yet, head to your local Walmart or Target and grab Degree Cool Rush, the fan favorite scent from the world's #1 antiperspirant brand.
This is the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, it was a sight to behold. 13 to 16,000 packed in at Queens when AOC and Bernie Sanders, along with Governor Kathy Hochul and some others, came out to support ZoHran Mamdani, and listen to a screaming AOC at the rally in Queens over the weekend.
This city was built by the Irish escaping famine, Italians fleeing fascism, Jews escaping Holocaust, Black Americans fleeing slavery and Jim Crow, Latinos seeking a better life, Native people standing for themselves, Asian Americans coming together in Queens, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Manhattan, in Staten Island, in this country, in a vision to build the freest, toughest, and greatest city on earth.
Wow, that's a doozy. At least I caught two of those there where she said Italians fleeing fascism and Mamdani's given the finger to Columbus statues, right? And then Jews escaping the Holocaust. All the anti-Semitic comments that Mamdani has said. She's got a set of cojones to bring those things up in a speech at a Mamdani rally. That's guts. That's unbelievable. Let's go to Stan in Forest Hills on line 1. Stan, your thoughts tonight.
I was at both events just for a couple of minutes each.
Oh, wow. So what was it
let
like?
me tell you quick. I know you're running out of time unless you want to turn me over the next hour. But here's the point. At the rally for Andrew Cuomo, it was about Israel. There were about 200 to 300 Orthodox Jews on Main Street near Bile Place in Queens, and that's all that showed up there. Then I headed over back to my home in Forest Hills. I'm about 5 blocks from the stadium, and at night people were coming. I don't know if there was 18,000. The stadium could hold up to 12, I think.
Yeah, I heard 13 to 16,
right,
but who knows, right?
It was jammed. If we just go by that, this election is over. But you had brought up that the 10 points is now, it's 10-point difference. That's good. The problem is, when I voted yesterday, look, I'm telling everybody, look for Andrew Cuomo. He's not on the same line as everybody else. You have to go down and find his name. It's a little further down. It's not on the same line with Mamdani or Curtis. They got the top lines because they're Republican nominees. He's on the bottom line. You have to look for it.
No, you know what, Stan? That's a great point. By the way, I have a very quick question to ask you, too.
Sure.
First off, you're right. They need to educate people where Cuomo is on the ballot. Young or old at the rally? How old were the people at the rally?
I would say more to between 18 and 35 to 40.
Yeah.
More young. There were seniors, but not much, very little. A lot of Muslims.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard, by the way, that very young people. So the question is, will they get out and vote? Because so far it looks like they're older that are coming out. That could be a good sign.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?